At that family dinner, one sentence changed everything. But not in the way they expected. The fork hadn't even touched Maya's plate when her father lifted his glass, cleared his throat, and delivered the blow that would split her world clean in half. "Nobody needs your money or you," he said, as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. The words hovered above the table for a moment, sharp enough to slice through the buzzing ceiling light, sharp enough to make the room feel suddenly too small. Heat crawled up Maya's neck in a slow, humiliating bloom, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. Her sister didn't even look surprised, just nodded faintly, as if she'd been waiting for this moment, as if it confirmed something she'd always believed. Their mother kept her eyes on her food, pushing cold vegetables around her plate like she could pretend none of this was happening. The room didn't fall silent. Silence would have meant care. Instead, it settled into something worse. A dull indifference, the kind that tells you the verdict was decided long before the words were spoken. Maya sat perfectly still, her pulse thundering in her ears, but her face didn't crack. Not this time. Inside, something shifted, quietly, decisively. It wasn't rage, not even hurt. It was clarity, a realization rising from somewhere she didn't know she had. This was the moment their downfall began. Not hers. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself, her hands remaining calm on her lap even as her chest tightened with the truth she could no longer ignore. They didn't see it, didn't even bother to look up long enough to notice that the version of her they'd grown comfortable stepping on was gone. A part of her was breaking, yes, but another part was crystallizing into something stronger, sharper. A midsection engagement. Pause here for a second. Let the weight of those words settle. Have you ever had someone dismiss your entire existence in one sentence? Her father took another sip, satisfied with himself. The conversation picked back up around her, her sister laughing, her mother asking about work, as if Maya had simply ceased to exist. And maybe in their minds she had. But for the first time in her life she didn't shrink. She didn't beg. She didn't agree, she simply watched them, realizing she was seeing them clearly for the first time. They thought I'd swallow it the way I always did. But I knew something they didn't. I grew up thinking this was what family meant. I didn't realize I was being trained for exploitation. Maya didn't become the reliable one overnight. It was a slow molding, shaped by years of silence disguised as love. Growing up, she learned early that belonging had a price, and that price was obedience. If her sister Sarah threw a tantrum, Maya was the one told to be the bigger person. If the house felt tense, she became the quiet buffer, absorbing the moods no one wanted to deal with. Silence wasn't just encouraged. It was rewarded. The quieter she was, the more useful she became. 10 years old, she was already running Sarah's homework assignments to school when Sarah forgot, even though Maya herself had perfect attendance. By 13, she was canceling weekend plans to stay with grandma when her parents needed a night out. Later, when adulthood hit, the pattern simply evolved. Sarah's unpaid bills, emergency transfers, late-night phone calls about yet another crisis. The requests never came with gratitude. They came with expectation. And from the outside, they looked like a postcard family. Holiday photos lined the hallway. Matching sweaters, forced smiles, Mom's famous casserole steaming in the middle of a perfectly decorated table. Neighbors envied them. Friends admired their closeness. No one saw the truth hiding behind the curated picture. Maya wasn't part of a loving unit. She was the glue they used, stretched thin but never acknowledged. The only person who ever noticed the strain was Grandma. Her tiny kitchen felt like a different universe, warm with the smell of cinnamon and the hum of her old radio. When Maya sat there, she wasn't the responsible one, the fixer, the wallet, or the therapist. She was just Maya. Grandma would pat her hand and say in that soft, steady voice, "You don't have to save the whole world, honey." Maya always smiled when she heard it, but she never truly understood what Grandma meant. Not then. As the years went on, reliable morphed into something heavier. It didn't just mean dependable. It meant available. It meant unquestioning. It meant carrying what others refused to lift. The transformation was so subtle no one noticed, not even Maya. She thought she was being helpful. They thought she was theirs to use. Her own life, her career as a project manager, her deadlines, her dreams, became invisible to the people closest to her. To them, she wasn't a woman with ambition. She wasn't someone building a future. She was an extension of the family machine, a permanent solution to temporary problems. She didn't see the erasure happening in real time. She thought this was normal. She thought this was love. Grandma tried to warn me. I just didn't understand who I needed saving from. The plates kept scraping. Glasses kept clinking. Someone even laughed. It was surreal, like the moment before had never happened, like her father's sentence hadn't cracked the floor beneath her feet. Maya sat there, still as stone, watching her family slip seamlessly back into their routine. The normalcy felt unnatural, almost eerie, like watching actors continue a scene after forgetting she was still on stage. Sarah swirled her wine with that familiar smugness, not even looking at Maya when she said, "You take things too seriously." As if belittling her was some gentle piece of advice. As if Maya hadn't paid Sarah's late rent 3 months in a row. As if she hadn't bought school clothes for Sarah's kids last fall when Sarah wasn't in the mood to go shopping. Maya's chest tightened, but she didn't speak. She just watched them, really watched them. For the first time, they felt like strangers sitting across from her in a train compartment. Close enough to hear breathing, but miles away in every way that mattered. Her mom finally looked up, fork paused halfway to her mouth. "You don't have a family of your own," she said matter-of-factly. "You're burning yourself out for nothing." She said it like it was logical, like Maya was foolish for caring in the first place. The words didn't land like an insult. They landed like a dismissal. A confirmation that Maya's life in their eyes didn't count. Notice how they all had the same script? That's not coincidence. That's conditioning. Then her father chimed in again, uninterested and unmoved. "Don't make this dramatic. You take things personally." Gaslighting wrapped in boredom. The kind of manipulation you don't notice until your mind has already started rejecting it. Maya's gaze drifted to the empty chair at the end of the table. Grandma's chair. The one anchor who used to absorb the venom so Maya didn't have to. A warning she didn't understand until it was too late. She placed her napkin on the table, slowly, deliberately. The room didn't stop, but something in her did. She stood up, and for the first time the conversation faltered. That napkin fold was the smallest gesture. But it was the beginning of the biggest change of my life. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. Real power moves quietly. Maya walked out of the dining room without a word, without a glance back, without giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. The night air outside was sharp against her skin, clearing her head more effectively than anything that had happened inside. No yelling, no chaos. Just the cold, clean silence of a woman who had finally stopped begging to be understood. She caught her reflection in the car window. Tired, shoulders slightly curved forward, the posture of someone who had carried too much for far too long. She didn't look weak. She looked worn, like a bridge that had held up traffic for years without anyone checking if it needed repair. Each step toward the car peeled back another layer of memory. The forgotten birthdays, the emergencies she covered, the endless, "can you just..." requests that built the burden one brick at a time. Home felt different that night. Not lonely. Just neutral, like a piece of territory she was finally reclaiming. She dropped her keys on the counter and took a long, steadying breath. Something inside her had shifted at that dinner table, and it followed her all the way home. That was when she opened her laptop and created a folder titled Family Payments. A simple label for something life-changing. When I opened that folder, I wasn't just looking at numbers. I was looking at proof. She began pulling bank statements going back years. Transfers labeled emergency, just this once, and help please. Receipts for school supplies she never got reimbursed for. Messages asking for money, for time, for favors, all blending into a pattern she could finally see clearly now that she wasn't drowning in it. One document led to another, forming a timeline. An undeniable record of exploitation disguised as family need. And as the evidence stacked up, Jen's voice resurfaced in her mind. "If you ever change your mind, my lawyer is good." She opened her email, attached everything, and hovered over the send button for just a moment. Not out of fear but acknowledgement. This was the line. The before and after. Then she clicked. Silence used to be her servitude. Tonight it became her strategy. Have you ever realized that the evidence of your mistreatment was there all along, just waiting for you to see it? The reply came in minutes. Turns out, when you document years of exploitation, lawyers pay attention. Maya wasn't expecting a same-day response, let alone one that arrived before she'd even finished her morning coffee. The subject line was blunt. Review of documentation. Inside, even blunter. This isn't just family help. It's a pattern of financial exploitation. She stared at the sentence, her pulse steady, not racing this time. She saw their faces in her mind. Her father's dismissive smirk, her mother's cool detachment, Sarah's entitlement. And for once, the image didn't make her feel small. It made her feel certain. She typed 2 words that would reroute the entire trajectory of her life. I'm ready. The meeting happened the next afternoon. The lawyer, a calm man with sharp eyes and an even sharper understanding of exploitation dynamics, spread her documents across the table like puzzle pieces. Mounts, screenshots, exact phrases her family had used. Just this once. You're the only one who can help. We'll pay you back next month. They never did. He took notes without pausing. Then he looked up and said the sentence that cemented everything. Once we file, this stops being private. Maya didn't flinch. They stopped being just family the moment they treated me like a walking account. He nodded, clicked a few keys, and walked her through the formal fraud report. When she submitted it, the confirmation email arrived with a single line. Your claim has been received. Quiet. Clean. Final. And right on cue, her family started texting, Sarah first. You're acting weird. Did I do something? Then her mom. Lengthy voicemails filled with concern dipped in condescension. Don't take everything so personally, Maya. Her father's short and irritated. Call me. Now. While they left worried voicemails, I was building a case they never saw coming. In one voicemail, Maya heard something in the background. A declined card beep. Sarah's frustrated sigh. The irony almost made her laugh. 2 weeks later, her lawyer called. They've opened an investigation. It's moving fast. Maya exhaled, a weight leaving her body she didn't even know she still held. She waited for guilt, for fear, for panic. None came. Just clarity. Her lawyer added one more thing before hanging up. You've been carrying this alone for years. It's theirs to carry now. She closed her eyes and let the truth settle. Ready. That word felt like the first honest question anyone had asked me in years. I parked outside the house I grew up in, watching my family through the window. They had no idea what was about to knock on their door. Maya sat in her car for a moment, engine off, hands steady on the wheel. The house looked exactly the same. White trim, overwatered lawn, curtains drawn halfway like always. Everything unchanged. Everything pretending nothing ever happened. Through the window she saw them. Sarah on her phone, Dad reading the paper, Mom fussing in the kitchen. A perfect little tableau of denial. She didn't come to beg, argue, or warn them. She came to be present. Present when truth finally entered the room they'd kept her silent in for decades. She got out of the car and walked up the driveway. No hesitation. No trembling. When she opened the front door and stepped inside. Her father didn't even look up. Sarah rolled her eyes. You could have called. Maya shrugged, her voice cool. Thought you didn't need me. They continued their small talk, their dismissiveness as predictable as ever. It almost made what was coming feel merciful. Almost. Then, 3 hard knocks. Official. Unavoidable. 3 knocks. That's all it took to change everything. Dad frowned. Who the hell is that? Mom smoothed her sweater, suddenly nervous. Sarah sighed dramatically. When he opened the door, 2 investigators stepped inside, badges lifted, expressions firm. Financial Crimes Unit. We need to speak with the members of this household regarding an active investigation. Maya watched their faces freeze. Color drained from Sarah first, then her mother, then her father. Slowly, painfully, Like reality was sinking in through cracks they didn't know where. Point one investigator tapped his tablet. We have extensive documentation submitted by Maya Thompson regarding unauthorized transfers, coercive financial pressure, and multiple instances of exploitation. Sarah spun toward Maya, hissing, "Maya, what did you do?" Maya didn't blink. "I stayed silent. Then I started doing things you never expected." Seth, loud, red-faced as always, burst out. "It was a few transfers, family stuff." The investigator didn't bother hiding his reaction as he scrolled. 27 transfers totaling over $14,000. Not including non-reimbursed expenses. Dad tried to bluff. "This is family business. We'll handle it privately." "This is criminal," the investigator replied flatly. Mom's voice cracked as she reached for Maya. "Please. Tell them this isn't what it looks like." Maya stepped back. "You told me nobody needed my money or me. So I stopped giving you both." Sarah's voice rose, panicked. "You're going to let them ruin our lives." "I didn't ruin anything," Maya said calmly. "I just stopped hiding what you did." The investigators continued reading off dates, amounts, authorization notes. Each line was a mirror held up to their lies. Finally, Dad snapped. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." Maya held his gaze. "I left a long time ago. You're just noticing now." She turned and closed the door softly, leaving them with the only thing that had ever truly belonged to them. "Dad thought threatening to cut me off would break me. He didn't realize I'd already cut myself free." 3 days later, my phone lit up with panic. They finally realized what silence from me actually meant. The messages started early. Sarah first, of course. "Call me. This is serious." Then another. "My account is frozen. What did you do?" She didn't answer. Seth followed with a single furious text. "They froze everything." Her mom sent an email dripping with guilt. "Families don't do this to each other. We were just struggling." And her dad, the man who once told her nobody needed her, left a voicemail so shaken it almost didn't sound like him. Meanwhile, Jen and Kelly sent messages that felt like warm lights in a dark hallway. "Proud of you. You finally chose you." Maya read those. She answered those, because by then, she was sitting in her new apartment 2 states away. Boxes half open, sunlight pouring through unfamiliar windows. A space untouched by obligation. A life she chose. Silence used to feel like punishment. Now it felt like oxygen. Not absence. Freedom. She thought back to that dinner, to the sentence meant to break her. Funny how it did the opposite. Those words didn't end her. They exposed them. And they pushed her toward a truth she should have learned years ago. Love without respect isn't loyalty. It's captivity. Walking away wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was healing. It was the boundary that finally saved her. If any part of my story feels familiar, if you've ever been used, dismissed, or told you were too sensitive, you aren't alone. You deserve reciprocity, not extraction. You deserve to be seen, not spent. Share your experience in the comments below. I read all of them. And if you want more stories about finding freedom from toxic family patterns, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what comes next. The silence they once mocked became the boundary that saved me. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop giving people access to you.